third national park today. Fort Frederica, a British settlement built in 1736. So now we've had Spanish, French, and British on this trip. Woo. How quaint. These trees are amazing. They're so big. They look so cool. So there used to be a 6-foot tall wall with a moat, and inside of the wall with the moat there was an entire town with a fort, and it was set up on the border with Spain during the Spanish-British War that happened kind of around these parts, and I believe was more of like a on-paper war than an actual all-out fight. But once the war was over, the town kind of slowly diminished. And there's a funny little bird right there, look at him. He's cute. So this town only existed for a handful of years, right? Whenever the war ended, it kind of went away. The newest house being built in like the 1750s, and the earliest being built in the 1740s. There's oranges growing in the tree up there. But what's interesting is how nice and well laid out everything is. Like, it's a nice grid system with roads cutting between everything and like well-defined plots of land all over the place. This is what it looked like back then, and that's what it looks like now. You could tell it's a very strategic spot because this thing is sticking out in every direction that you look. There's the river, so they can just sorry, I got a spam call. They picked the spot because they could defend it from everywhere. Look at all the waterfront. Anyway, cannons. We have arrived in the Driftwood Beach, full of the drifty woods and the beach. Everywhere on this beach, there's clay just floating around. It's super weird. But we found out a fun trick to do with the clay. If you take it,
It what?
it just plops.
It plops. Oh! Do it again. The other one was better.
Oh, the little ones we throw on the ground. A shocking discovery. Little tiny ones, the ground. This beach is pretty cool. It's a little windy! Look at this boat! He's moving! Look, it's Chell! She's having a grand old time, isn't she? The sand is so cool.
Oh,
We were on our way to get dinner and we found
31.81.
a little self-guided light tour, and now we're gonna find the radio.
Okay, so the little island that we're on right now, it has tons of Christmas lights everywhere.
Those ones over there.
Those are pretty. And so Robert and I are just listening to Christmas music in our very warm car with the heated seats because we're cold, because we got done walking on the beach during sunset. And now we get to look at all these pretty lights. They're so cool.
We paid $10 to go to a light show,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna play mini golf at all the lights.
Yeah, we get to play mini golf soon. I am super excited.
Because there's the Dairy Queen.
Yeah, I saw all the lights.
I saw some of them, but I didn't notice like how many there were. I didn't see how like.
Welcome to Savannah, Georgia. It's a brisk 30 degrees out and we're looking for brekkie.
Join us on the quest. Nice and quiet. Shell's braking and entering in a horseless carriage now. Unfortunately for her, she won't get far. There's no horses, except it's not a horseless carriage, it's a horseful carriage, and I'm just talking now. Shell and I have become patrons of the Maple Street Biscuit Company. However, no biscuits yet. Are you excited? She's excited, ladies and gentlemen. These two guys There's one of them. And then there's another guy in an orange shirt somewhere floating around. You can see him. They keep walking around everywhere and just taking pictures of like the oddest things. Just like they're like, see a building and they're like, hell yeah, and they take a picture of it. It's super funny. The biscuits have arrived.
I'm gonna go get
The squirrels in the trees are fighting. I don't know if you'll be able to see it.
There's another one going into play.
Apparently this will just be an architecture tour of Savannah. The last park that we stopped at was where Forrest Gump's opening scene was filmed. Shell found the xylophone art installation. It doesn't work so well though. We went and we got a muffin and a red velvet whoopie pie. And for our next stop, we are at the Fort Polski National Monument. It's a fort named after a Polish man who fought in the Revolutionary War, I think.
we read about him
In Savannah in one of the squares.
Yeah.
So here's the history on Fort Pulaski. During the War of 1812, they burnt down Washington, D.C., the British did, and we decided as a country that we needed a bunch of coastal forts to protect everything. So we built a bunch of forts along the coastline, much like Fort Jefferson that we went to earlier on this trip, and Fort Monroe that we went to during our Fiat trip. So this is one of those forts. It has a bit more of an interesting history because during the Civil War, it was barely manned whenever the war had started at Fort Sumter in South Carolina, which is actually our next stop. And the Confederates just showed up here, marched in, and the fort was immediately surrendered without a shot being fired. After that, about a year later, the Union came down here, and with the brand new advent of rifled guns, quickly just tore this fort apart and retook it in 30 hours. After that, they kind of built it up, made these earthworks that you're looking at here for cannons and magazines and all sorts of fun things. But it kind of just fell into disrepair because it wasn't really useful anymore. Then in the 30s, it turned into a national monument, and the Civilian Conservation Corps came in and took it over, and it is what you see today. Chell loves it. So we're here on top of the fort walls now. And it does have a lot of striking resemblances to Fort Jefferson. But there's lots of cannons and artillery. But really, we did one of the ranger talks, and he brought up a good point that the Civil War was actually a war won completely by technology, and there was a whole bunch of new interesting technologies happening, like the rifling and guns, whenever that war was going on, which I thought was interesting. And Jill did too, even though she wasn't really paying attention.
I was paying more attention than you were.
Yeah, so then
Old cranes and things, how they built the forts. After the Union took the fort, they turned it into a prison for the Confederate soldiers. The Union never used this for any sort of fighting. And now, unfortunately, they've imprisoned the electricians through there. This is what it looks like beneath the floor. They did a lot of reinforcing foundation work here to actually build it because this is effectively a marshland, so the ground ain't so solid. We're going into the mounds. On the outside now, and you can see all the scars from where the cannonballs hit. And then I think Chell and I were talking, and we think the red brick is where the Civilian Conservation Corps, or where they came in after the war was over and rebuilt the fort and spruced her back up a little bit.
So if you know for sure, let us know.
So we've confirmed the red brick is in fact where the wall got all blown out. they fired 5,275 shots and shells in 30 hours of this. It might be a little hard to see. That is a shell still stuck in the wall. From this side, you can really see the extent of the cannonball hits. They were aiming there specifically so they could break through, and on the opposite end, going across that way of that wall, that was where their powder magazine was stored. So when they broke through, the general here at the time knew that the only option was to surrender, else everyone would be inside of the fort would be dead shortly, because they had 40,000 pounds of black powder that would have been ignited had they gotten hit, and they were now out in the open.
Yay, South Carolina! Woo!
We did it. Also, we're back in the car now, on our way to our next stop. And this tow truck pulled out.